So I'm excited. Ooh, this is really low. I'm excited tonight to be here to talk about my breasts and breast cancer and my subsequent conversion to being vegan. One of the things I've noticed is that every time I tell someone that I've had breast cancer, the first thing they do is look at my breasts. I still have my breasts. We'll take a second, look at whoever's breast you want in the room, just get it out of your system. I know for lots of men, once they hear the word breast, they kind of tune out everything else, so this is your chance to give it a good look. I also want to say that I'm not opposed to meat. I don't think I'd go as far as Lady Gaga and do a meat dress, but I feel like everyone kind of has their own path, and I'm just here to advocate making different or better food choices. So my journey really started with Emma Baker. She's my naturopath, and crazily enough, Emma suggested I get a mammogram at the age of 38, which I thought was really odd because if you follow conventional medicine, they always say you don't need one until over the age of 40. So I went in a little early, not worried about it, went into Central Oregon Radiology Associates, had my mammogram, totally expecting to see this. But instead, I had an abnormal mammogram. So, maybe 2 mammograms, a biopsy, and a lot of phone calls later, I was diagnosed with early stage DCIS, an estrogen-positive form of cancer, which really took me aback and pretty much freaked me out. So I started researching all the best doctors. I was really lucky. I had a good neighbor friend of mine who worked at the hospital and referred me to some of the best doctors we have in Bend. Andy Higgins, he's my breast surgeon, did a great job, still have him. Cora Calamini, and then Emma was there to kind of put all the pieces together for me and help me and kind of guide some of the decision-making that I had to do. So I was presented with a couple different options. One was a bilateral mastectomy, which means they lop them off entirely. I could have a lumpectomy, could have radiation, or I could take a drug called tamoxifen that for a premenopausal woman basically takes you from 100% estrogen to 0 overnight. Pretty intense. And so I kind of expanded what I call my wellness posse. I met Chris Carr about 3 months before my diagnosis. She is a vegan living with cancer, and it's kind of created this whole system for how she treats her body and how she kind of lives her life. And then I was also really lucky to meet my friend Melinda Moore, who used to run a website in LA called Levine Eco, but she really schooled me on all the different products and chemicals that we have in our life that create elevated estrogen levels. So parabens and lotions, plastics, microwave use, non-stick cooking pans. I mean, you would not believe the overhaul I had to do in my house. And then I also read a couple of different books. Kathy Freston's book, Veganist, I don't know if anyone's read it. Amazing, amazing book. Chris Carr also has her own book out now called Crazy Sexy Diet, which is all about lifestyle changes and kind of ridding your body of toxins. But what I decided was the best path for me was to not do radiation and to not do tamoxifen, but instead to try to get rid of all the estrogen I was taking in my body by cutting a lot of things out. So I stopped taking birth control pills after 20-something years, cut out beef, cut out dairy, and unfortunately had to cut out most alcohol, which, if anyone in this room knows me, is probably the hardest challenge and something I don't always excel at. And then I really had to kind of rethink my food pyramid, and I tried to go right in the middle of the pyramid. So vegetables and fruits, I try to eat mostly raw, which is also challenging. And the one comment I get all the time from people when they find out that I'm vegan is, where do you get your protein? I love that question. And I was reading a really interesting article one time, and this woman had a good response to it and said, well, where do cows get their protein? Cows are these majestic, muscular creatures, and they don't have any animal products in their system after they're weaned. So like most animals, they wean, they get off of milk, and then they eat grass, and they're vegan for the rest of their lives. But I know a lot of people don't like being compared to cows. So I've got another picture for you in a second. Ladies, this next one's for you. But even if you look at protein amounts, in broccoli there's 11.2 grams for, 10.6 ounces of broccoli, which is not a lot, versus 5.4 grams of protein in a steak. Also, if you want to compare yourself to someone, I know we've got a lot of ultra-fit people in the room. Brendan Brazier is a triathlete on the left. He has a whole line of vegan products out called Vega, which are amazing. If you ever want to try a vegan protein powder, that's the one to use. But clearly, Brandon does not have any problems retaining or growing muscle. Even after all that, I feel like it's really tough for people to embrace a vegetarian vegan lifestyle, and I think a lot of it is just getting comfortable with the fact that you don't need to have meat and dairy at every single meal. And it was a big hurdle that I had to overcome too. And Kathy Freston has this great principle called leaning into veganism, which is, maybe pick one meal a day where you're not eating meat and dairy, or maybe you don't eat meat and dairy for breakfast and lunch, but you have a little bit of meat for dinner. It's just kind of getting into an attitude where you don't have to have meat at every single meal. And there's also a really great campaign going on now called Meatless Mondays that you might have heard of. The San Francisco School District just made an announcement they're embracing that in the school system. So just one day a week when you're not doing meat. So I hope I've inspired some of you at least to give it a shot, maybe one meal a day. Thanks so much.